Welcome, this is your life now, a wasteland where we all take a vow.
Hi there, my name is Mallory. I've had multiple sclerosis for 19 years and I've utilized a power wheelchair for 13. I share what our family's experience is like dealing with a chronic illness. And today I'm flying solo. I wanted to talk through how I made the last video a success. And I struggle with the word how I made because honestly, there was a lot of hands in the pot that supported me and helped me work through that. So I wanted to speak to that because at the end of the day, like that, I would call bluff. I would either be strongly encouraged by that last video, that it like we can do hard things through our fatigue and brain fog, or I would be strongly discouraged because I made it look so easy or as if it was simple, but it wasn't. So I wanted to talk through that because there was a lot of learning experiences throughout the preparation of that. So let's talk about the timeline first. So I had, every morning, I shouldn't say every morning. I try every morning to have a quiet time over coffee, out overlooking our patio. I do like to bird watch and just animals in general, maybe. And I name them all. I make sure everybody's fed, and meaning bird seed and nuts for the squirrels and things like that. So if we ever have a pest problem, it's because I probably prompted it. But anyways, it's just something I enjoy. I have my coffee and quiet time with the Lord, read my Bible, and watch birds and squirrels and anybody else that wants to visit our backyard. But anyways, something that I do is I do take a lot of notes. I think it's extremely helpful for me anyways. I'm a very visual person, so it's extremely helpful for me to retain information if I write it down, or highlight and visually see what what has come from my brain, what my thoughts are, and how I get those and what they look like on paper. And so I do take a lot of notes if my hands cooperate. That's obviously a problem too. Like I don't have the coordination sometimes to utilize a pen, let alone sometimes like use a normal fork. Like I do sometimes use like toddler silverware that's bigger and lighter in weight. But anyways, that's a subject for another day, I guess. But so I do try to take notes, and I think it's really important to take notes in your Bible, because for this scenario, like it was really helpful for me to go back and prepare my message. But anyways, so preparation, of course, this was something the Lord had been preparing in my own heart. I thought it was for my personal use, with things that I was going through, things that my family were going through. In the end, I took a lot of notes in my Bible, and journaled and prayed. But when I was asked if I would participate or speak at this Freedom Conference, I didn't give an immediate yes, and that's okay. I really, in any scenario, it's okay to say no. It's okay to ponder, and I think we need to give ourselves grace for that. We are managing a chronic illness, and so I didn't give an immediate yes. But I will say I did know immediately that I had a message. I knew what that was going to be. I knew the Lord was preparing that for this moment. It was a beautiful loop of the Lord's preparation for for that message. But anyway, so I took a lot of notes. Didn't know at all that it was going to be something that I was going to present and prepare for an audience. But in the end, that's what happened. But I did give later a yes with stipulations. And those stipulations included a early morning time slot. So the message that you saw in the recording that was posted to our podcast actually was recorded between 11 a.m. and 12:15 my time. So I was able to knock that out before I knew, like I start to crash about 1 p.m. every day. And so I knew those things, and it was becoming ever more evident during the preparation for this message. So anyways, I asked for an early morning time slot before I gave a yes, and that was able to be provided to me. So anyways, it was a yes at that point, and I hit the ground running. Obviously not for real. I hit the ground at 6 miles an hour in a wheelchair. How about that? Anyways, I mean, this is the first experience of this magnitude or scenario for me. And so there was a lot of learning opportunities. And what I ended up doing was talking to a lot of speakers within our church, a lot of pastors, even folks that I knew, or folks and friends that I knew spoke in front of audiences quite a bit. I just started gathering information, how they prepare, how they practice, how, and additionally, like I started like really recognizing and paying attention to my body and what I could handle. Just because I knew I needed to, and I also was extremely honored and really wanted to do the best job that I could. And so really what I started recognizing is I start to crash about 1 o'clock. And so I got my 11 a.m. presentation time locked down. But that wasn't any different than my preparation. I had to make sure that I scheduled time within and around our regular activities. And so what that looked like was like early mornings, not necessarily early, because it's really important that we get rest as well. And so just whenever I woke up, I would, get my coffee in, get my quiet time in with the Lord, and then I would start working on my message. And then from every day from there, because I had about 2 months to prep. And of course, as presentation time got closer, I kind of pivoted and added new things to help me. But I started really honing in on early mornings. And when I say early mornings, that's more like between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. Like it wasn't like 6 o'clock and any of that stuff. Because again, rest is really important for us. And it's hard to come by sometimes. And so I really started focusing on trying to get early morning things addressed, because I knew I had the least brain fog. I knew I had the most energy. And so I just started hitting mornings and looking at mornings very differently. And really that's something now that I realize like I can apply to my podcast, because, I learned a lot through this experience. But I started talking to pastors and really understanding like how they prepared their messages, and then others on how to present well. I mean, I worked in environments that allowed me to learn a lot, but also present information to large crowds and groups, executives as well. And I don't know. So those things were taken into account, but I don't know. I had to take in account where I am today. And I think that's important because we're always with MS. We're always kind of evolving. And additionally, I was taking this on during the winter, which is something that too I didn't prepare for when I had an October goal with this, even the podcast. Like, I had not prepared for winter, and the cold is so hard on me. So hard. Spring is finally here to stay in Texas. I felt that at the beginning of last week. And like, I've wanted to capitalize so much on the fact that I can tolerate spring so much better. It's kind of a season of hope for me, that I'm not as bad as the winter makes me feel. But that's the other thing, as I was working through winter months, when I don't feel my best, and fatigue is really hard, brain fog's really hard. Just I mean, in the winter, I can't even get out of bed by myself. And transferring to go to the restroom or anything like that is really challenging. And in most cases, my husband has to help me get to and from, just because we don't have all the resources we need in our home. But these were all the things I was working through to prepare that message. But if I saw that message, I don't know, I'd either be encouraged or discouraged, given my moments, because, we deal with a lot. So, again, I originally began tackling this message with the idea that I was going to create a manuscript, which I did accomplish. And I accomplished a manuscript by going through all my notes in my Bible, and pulling out everything from the passages, all my highlights, all my notes, everything that I already had prepped. And so I took all that and put that into a Microsoft Word document utilizing it's called Saris. S as in Sam, A as in Apple, R as in Robert, A as in Apple, S as in Sam. But it is Saris voice to text, and it is actually pretty darn inexpensive, and you get about 100 minutes free when you start using it. But what that allowed me to do was just sit and record. So in the winter, typing is extremely difficult on me. Fatigue, brain fog, handwriting, eating. I mean, everything that requires any type of dexterity or coordination is just, winter is so hard on me. And it's just because all my nerve signals just slow down in the winter months. So anyway, so I used Sarah's voice to text to get everything that was rattling around in my brain on paper. But additionally, everything that I had, all my notes from my Bible, my journals, it additionally helped me to get all that. And then throughout the day, even in the evenings, when I was attempting to get things out of my head, when I knew it was after my 1:00 crash time, and I would use voice to text within notes on my phone. So random thoughts, random things that would come to my mind throughout the day between 1 and 10 o'clock bedtime, right? I would just note those within my phone so that I could come back to it in the morning when I wasn't so fatigued or tired. But I mean, my goal was originally to manuscript, take my manuscript, bullet that down, and speak from those bullets, which I didn't do, if you noticed. And then thirdly, the bullets that would be displayed up on the screens. And so where I found myself is really within the last 2 to 1 week before I was going to present, I just was really realizing that I was not going to be able to retain all the information to be able to speak and provide a message that included every tidbit, every detail that was on my heart. And so I did pivot, and you see this in the video as well, that I did end up working and presenting from my laptop. So, and what I would say with that is, if you are in this situation and determine that you need to use that, like a touch screen is extremely helpful. But where I found myself in that moment and on that day is, I took a mouse with me. I had a table set up. I obviously didn't go up on the stage because of stairs and limitations there, and I'm lucky to have a chair that raises up. So I was kind of presenting, or felt as though I was presenting to an audience, and I hope they felt the same way as well. But I made that aspect work. But the presentation piece, I did have to present from the laptop, and from the manuscript. I just kind of scrolled quickly, and you can see that in the video as well. But I did have to modify it where I spoke from the manuscript. And it wasn't my original attempt or way I thought I was going to attack it. But again, I just realized I couldn't retain that information. And I think when you have something that you've prepared, you've put so much work in, and you've made functional for yourself, and you want to do a good job with it, consider every element that you need to make that successful. And that is ultimately where I found myself, as I was going to have to present it from that, so that I didn't miss any element, anything that was important that kept the message flowing. So that's what you witnessed. Additionally, here's the thing. I did find that I had to manipulate my medications in a sense that I didn't take things that would make me groggy in the mornings as I prepared. So what that looked like is, like, if I didn't take pain relievers or anything at the very beginning of my day, just because I wanted to be the most clearly minded individual as I prepared. And I didn't feel like any of those things hindered my functionality during that time period, because of course I was very careful to schedule prep time, to schedule my presentation time in the morning. And then I took into consideration the medications and things that I needed to manipulate around. Obviously, I didn't push back or move my DMT around in any way, but which is my disease modifying therapy, if you don't know that acronym. But there is a medication for fatigue that I do have, and that is Provigil. The generic to that is modafinil. That is M as in Mary, O as in Oscar, D as in dog, A as in apple, F as in Frank, I as in igloo, N as in Nancy, I as in igloo, and L as in Larry. So that is something I have learned throughout the years, because I've had this medication for quite some time. And honestly, I love taking it. The reason being is it's always surprising how clearly minded I feel. But funny story, 2 weeks before, I had to start 2 weeks before presenting, I have to start kind of introducing it to my body, right? Because it is, to me, a little bit overwhelming to have energy and so forth. But what I mean by that is, before presentation time, or even when I needed to, I just felt like I needed a clear mind to start working through the presentation or message, was I would take half a pill in the morning when I woke up, just to, I guess, introduce it to myself and get comfortable with how I feel. Because to be honest, it can be kind of overwhelming, like having that kind of energy. It's overwhelming and surprising to be able to function so clearly. But I choose not to take it every day, and I choose not to use it frequently, and that's simply because one of the side effects with that medication for fatigue is if I take it any more than 3 days, I end up with like severe anxiety. And then additionally, like I find myself in this like upper and downer need. So what I mean by that is when I take the Provigil, it's hard for me to go to sleep at night because I have my brain's ticking much better than ever. And so it's challenging to go to sleep at night. So then I end up in this like horrible cycle of uppers and downers where I'm taking Provigil to stay awake and functional and clear-minded so that I can get things on paper. And but then I got to take an Ambien to go to sleep at night. And so I don't feel comfortable, and I hate that cycle. And so I choose not to take that medication on a daily basis. I take it when I know I have busy days or days that I need to be focused. And so I very carefully manage that med so that I don't find myself in this terrible loop of uppers and downers, as well as dependent upon it or having the regular anxiety. So needless to say, I don't take that any more than 3 days. And some days I will take half a pill, midday, so that I can get through the last 8 hours of the day. And so I'm very careful with that, because I don't like the loop. I don't like, the constant medications and the uppers and downers situation. So I did find myself I would utilize that medication, to stay focused, to get things out of my brain. But then additionally, I used it on the day of presentation. I got up that morning, took half a pill, which you can do that with that medication. Just to make it through an entire day, I took half a pill that morning, and then I think about an hour before I presented, I took the other half of the pill, so that I had full effects of the Provigil in my system. And but I'll do that on days that I know I have a busy schedule. We went to the zoo this past week, and I took one that mornings and midday at the zoo, because I knew I was going to have to drive home in traffic, which can be a little intimidating in Dallas. And so I took another half pill midday so that I felt like I was clear-minded and could function well and get everybody home safely and so forth. So I don't know, something to consider when you're working through your needs and energy levels and fatigue and so forth. It's, to be successful. But so I considered the times a day. I also had to take into account weather. Spring is in Texas is a mysterious little thing. So what I mean by that is we have 4 springs that are introduced. What that looks like is, you get a lot of rain, and then it's really cold, and then all of a sudden you have this 80-degree day that's a blessing, and then we go back into a cold evening. So I had to take into account the weather, and so that meant paying very close attention to when rain was coming, when a cold front was going to be setting in, because I just don't feel good. I feel terrible when it's raining, muscular wise, and then when it's cold, nothing wants to work, nothing wants to function. And so I had to plan very carefully around the weather, the Texas weather, because of course, I started my podcast in October, so didn't plan that really well, but that's what I wanted to do. And so working around that, but additionally, I was asked to do this sermon with about 2 months prep time, and still all in the winter. So I had to really take into account the weather. But the voice to text was very helpful. But I want to get into the presentation practice, because I was really encountered with the fact that it was fatiguing for me to present. And so to practice and to retain the information the way I wanted it to be presented, the way I wanted it to sound, the moments that I needed to speed up my dialect, slow down, or just for seriousness and for application too. Those are all things that I think a normal individual will just practice, right? But what I was finding, and again, this was all helpful tidbits from friends and pastors, and I just was really taking in all the ways that individuals prepare, and I had to take all those things into account. But a friend had actually recommended recording yourself, and so what I found myself doing is I would, once I had my message prepared, I had everything on paper, and I additionally had everything organized where I thought I wanted it. I would sit down in the mornings, right typically before 11, and definitely before 1 p.m. is I would sit and record myself once, which was, that was plenty to fatigue me, especially when I wasn't on provincial days or cold weather or whatever else. So I would present without recording myself video wise. I would just record myself audio wise, and I would present the message, and then I would just listen to that all day, as much as I could. I would listen to that message over and over, and then the next day I would come back fresh-minded in the morning and move things around where I didn't feel like it fit well, or I thought it would be more impactful if that portion was a part of the beginning versus the end or middle, wherever the case. So that's how I made my brain retain the information, but also how I made it successful. And so I did that pretty solidly for the week I was going to present. I sat down and recorded in the morning, critiqued it, kept notes on my phone on where to move things and maybe even add things, as I was still, having my quiet times with the Lord. I was still adding to the message throughout those moments and critiquing and moving things, etc. And so, in the end, the presentation was made successful by very careful planning around fatigue, weather, and, just life events and things we already had scheduled, but also how much rest I was getting. Secondly was medication, manipulating my ability to be attentive. I kind of manipulated when and how I took Provigil and Ambien and muscle relaxers to get rest, and pain relievers. I was very careful so that I wouldn't have the brain fog when I needed to be attentive and functional. But secondly was, I think the biggest and most helpful thing for me was the realization that I couldn't present over and over and over and maintain stamina throughout the day. The biggest and most helpful thing was recording. So just sitting, and really that was just sitting down with my phone, recording, meaning reading my manuscript. I just read my manuscript to myself every morning, and I'd listen to that on repeat. Pause it when I was interrupted, whatever else. But I found that to be very helpful to prepare. what you guys were able to witness. But again, if there's anything I would say, it wasn't easy. But being attentive to my body, being attentive to all the ways in which I could prepare this message or get this, and additionally get this delivered, I think we've got to listen to our bodies, right? We've got to be attentive to what we can do on particular days and what we can't do. But additionally, where we can find those moments. I mean, even the weather right now, like it's been really challenging for me to get in the office because the weather is so nice, and I enjoy capitalizing on that because the spring is such a hopeful time for me because we've come out of the winter. I feel like my MS progresses. I'm so discouraged with winter months, and then spring comes and I'm like, wait, I'm not as bad as I thought I was. My body can function more. And so I think just being attentive to all of those elements, and again, normal people don't have to do this, and I know that. My hope is with preparing this episode that it helps and encourages someone to realize you can accomplish hard things. You just have to do it differently. And I'm sure in the end, if I'm ever asked to do something else like this, it could change. I may be recording another episode later on in our life that explains so much more and so much of a different scenario in preparation and how I accomplish that, because we're constantly challenged with different elements, different aspects of this disease. And so in the end, I may be recording something different years from now or months from now or whatever else, but this is just how I found myself able to be successful. And again, there a lot of prayer, a lot of guidance went into this, and a lot of very close friends that were honest with me about ways to be successful, ways to prepare. And I think it was just encouraging to see that everybody does things a little bit differently, and it kind of helped me to understand that, okay, I can be successful. I just have to do this a lot differently than most folks. So I hope this helps. I hope you're encouraged by the idea that you can do this. You can do hard things. It's not easy. It's not comfortable. But it can happen. You can do it. And time frames don't look the same as everybody else. Medication doesn't look the same as everybody else. Time frames don't look the same as everybody else. But again, you can work through it. There's a lot of tools out there. But again, I hope you're encouraged. I hope you can see some of the things that I was able to see. So thanks.
Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying the content we're creating, please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and find us wherever you can get your podcasts.